Welcome to Podcasting Power Hour with your host, Jeff Townsend, aka the Indie Podcast Father. I'm your co-host, Greg, from Indie Drop-In Network. Podcasting Power Hour is recorded live every Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on Twitter Spaces. Every week, an experienced panel of podcasters and other experts will tackle your podcasting questions. Special guests on the panel today: Ariel Nissenblatt, founder of Earbuds Podcast Collective and community manager at Squadcast FM. Jim Mallard, host of The Mallard Report. Tanner Campbell, host of Good Morning Podcasters. Dave Jackson, host of School of Podcasting and Ask the Podcast Coach. Pixie, host of Project Podcast with Pixie and Next on Stage 1. We will, of course, put links to all of our guests and any relevant information in the show notes. All right, let's get this party started.
We'll get it going. This is Podcasting Power Hour here Monday, June 20th. It's 2022, Greg, in case you forgot the year that we're currently in. I am Jeff Townsend, the host of this lovely weekly space we've been doing. And Greg, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. I will say, though, he's fallen and he can't get up. His social security number is 1. It's Greg from Indie Drop-In. You pick up from there, buddy.
How can I even follow this? You got most of that correct, except for all of it other than the Indie Drop-In part. Hello, everybody. Greg here from Indie Drop-In. I'm sure I'll talk more about Indie Drop-In later, but I'm happy that you are all here.
Next is Jim Mallard. He is the closest thing to the John McCain of podcasting, except for Tanner Campbell, of course. It's the Maverick Jim Mallard. He's been podcasting forever. What's going on, Jim?
Not a lot. Yeah, 2011 is when I started the Mallard Report. We talk a little bit about everything, paranormal, new age, religion, politics, money, all those things that mom and dad tell you not to talk about. Yeah, I try to talk about them all. So, yeah, there's that in a nutshell.
And all on one podcast, which is kind of freaking crazy, to be honest. But nevertheless, Tanner Campbell, what's going on, man? You used to be the podcasting sucks guy now, and you kind of did a Good Morning America ripoff, and it's Good Morning Podcasters now. So how you doing, Tanner?
Thought it was more of a Good Morning Vietnam ripoff, but I can go with GMA. Sure. I'm doing great, Greg. One of these times we should switch it up and let us introduce you. It'd be like, his name's Jeff. He works in a bottle top factory. He has to clean poop up sometimes. Jeff Townsend.
Yep, I am the go-to for all in my new career path that I've been forced upon me. Okay, next, though, let's get past Tanner there. The Hall of Famer, podcasting Hall of Famer. It's been podcasting since 2005. Tanner wasn't even weaned yet then. It's Dave Jackson. Thanks for joining us, Dave. I know buzzed you a while and you just got back a hold of me. So Dave must not check his Twitter DMs very often.
I do not. I suck at Twitter. I'm getting better. But yeah, Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting. Happy to be here. This should be fun.
It should be. And we'll let people start requesting now if they have any questions or something they want to talk about. In the meantime, Greg, I'm going to let you kick it off with some podcasting thoughts you've had this week.
Well, I think I struggled with the age-old question of what to do on vacation. I don't know if anybody thinks of that, but I know a lot of people just kind of tell the audience, "Hey, I'm taking off," but of course, I had to record additional episodes and get ahead. So that's not a recommendation, by the way. That's just what I did. So that's pretty much consumed my my week. Basically doing multiple weeks worth of work in a single week because I can never get ahead. and have episodes in the can, like every good podcast coach would tell you to do.
I've never been ahead, not once. It sounds nice though. Jim, what do you do ahead of vacations? I'm curious. This is a good topic because I think we all struggle with this.
I was gonna say, well, I'm a little different because I'm used to doing live shows. So if I'm taking the week off, I just take the week off, because to record ahead of time kind of lose that live dynamic that I've built into my show. So it sucks, but there are times, I will admit, there are times that I record a guest because of time zone differences, but I still don't think those shows are just as good either. So,
hey Jim, you know that people listen to your podcast like after you record it, right?
Yeah, but I'm
Okay.
talking for me. It's just how I prefer to do it, because I get that live dynamic from my listeners. So it's that friction that I like. So
Got it.
He's a
yeah,
I
trust me, I know people listen to the podcast because that's how 97% of people listen. But
I'm just messing with you. I'm trying
Yeah.
to shift the momentum to you instead of me.
Don't worry, it'll come to me. Sure, just give me a few more weeks; it'll be all on me.
Yeah, and if you have any questions or something you want to talk about, requests to speak, Dave, what do you do for vacations? I'm curious, man.
Well, here's my thought. I go on vacation. It's not my listeners like, well, I guess I'm not listening to podcasts this week because Dave's gone. No, they're going to go find something else to listen to. So I'm giving my audience time to go find something else to listen to. And in the event that show is better than mine, they may not be coming back. Maybe somehow somebody else is niched down and it really, really fits what they're talking about. And maybe I'm just not quite as good a fit as I thought I was. So I always record. When I went to Podfest, I recorded 2 episodes, one to go out my normal Monday, but while I was flying home, my episode came back out while I was flying home. So that's my just weird insecurity, worrying that I'm going to lose my audience if I miss 1 week, which I realize when you say it out loud is kind of like, well, then your show wasn't that good. But that's my thought on that.
You articulated my struggle perfectly, Dave, because Mark Asquith, he disappears for 2 months and comes back and says my downloads are better, and I just don't think I can wrap my head around it.
Yeah, I think part of it is because I realize there are times like you need to take a break, like you're mentally losing it, and your kids need braces and grandma's in the hospital, and life is happening. And that's where I think Mike Rowe, the guy that from Dirty Jobs and all that, he has a show called That's the Way I Heard It. And he said, hey, the good news is I got a book deal. He goes, the bad news is I can't do a podcast and write a book. And so he said, this will be next week is my last episode and I will be back on this date. And then when he came back on whatever that date was, he's like, hey, I got more good news. I got a TV show. And he said, so the show, so as long as you let people know if you have to leave, and again, that's not my first choice, but sometimes, you just got to, then just let them know when you're coming back. That way you don't lose your integrity.
Man, I don't do any of that. I guess it depends on the show. So for my daily, I'm fortunate, I podcast for podcasters. So I feel like I could just be like, hey guys, I'm going to take a week off. Bye. And they're going to be just fine with that because they're podcasters and they all probably wish they could do the same thing, but they don't podcast for podcasters, so they can't. But with my other podcast, Practical Stoicism, I just took a month off to finish the book that I was writing for it, which I finished. And I just told him, I said, hey, this is, I picked a logical place to stop in the text. And I said, hey, by the way, this is going to be the last episode. I'm going to take a month off. I'm going to do these things while I'm gone. And when I come back, everybody who's a subscriber will get a copy of this book in PDF form for free. And if you'd like to buy it, that would be really nice of you. And then I've got this other podcast. It's not mine, but it's one I listen to every day. And I thought that this gentleman did something pretty cool. His name's Alex Lieberman. He hosts a podcast called Founders Journal, which is from the guys who do the Morning Brew newsletter, which everyone here should subscribe to because it's a great newsletter. It has nothing to do with podcasting, but it's a great business and entrepreneurship newsletter. And he recently he's taking about 2 months off. And what he decided to do was he went back into the catalog and found the best episodes and just recycling them as classics. He just puts them parenthetically classic episodes. So he does like 3 episodes a week. He's been running classic episodes of the most popular episodes while he's gone working on this other project, which I thought was a great way to do it. If I didn't keep deleting my episodes, I could probably do something like that.
It would make more sense in your case because that's the one that always scratches my head when somebody takes an episode that's in their feed and then they re-release it. I go, if they had actually followed the show, they could have listened to it anyway. So Tanner, in your case, where they can't get it from your feed, I think that makes more sense to do it in that route. And I guess the bottom line is, as long as you communicate with your audience, because what happens, I think, again, all this crap is just my opinion. But have you ever gone to, like, you take your car in to get, I don't know, tires, and you think it's going to take 15, 20 minutes, whatever. And now it's 45 minutes to an hour. And you start, the minute you don't know what's going on, your mind goes negative. And I think that's the case where if you don't say anything and all of a sudden you're like, well, that's weird. There's no episode there's no episode today from Tanner. It wouldn't happen. And you do that daily show. So by day 2, you're like, oh, that's weird. 2 days in a row, third day, you're like, God, I hope he didn't die from COVID. So I think when you communicate with your audience that, hey, I'm taking a break, I think that's really the key, just so they know you didn't, like, get hit by a bus.
I'm convinced that 50% of my audience is kind of hoping I got hit by a bus.
That might be the case.
And the other 50% knows you. So if you didn't show up for a week, we would figure you were just doing something else and would eventually make your way back.
Right. Oh, he's starting a nonprofit this week.
That or we'd hit you with a bus. No, if anybody has any, we have some shy people today. It's a lot of the same people, but if you have anything you want to talk about or ask, feel free. In the meantime, I do want to say, do you think podcasting is, like, the listeners and consumers of it are more understanding of this vacation thing that we're talking about in comparison to radio? I mean, any other industry, really. What do you guys think?
I mean, yeah, they're not paying for anything. Of course, they're more understanding.
Yeah, fair enough.
My boss is less understanding when I had a boss, I guess. But yeah, podcast listeners that's another reason that I don't. I mean, again, I'm podcasting for podcasters, so I feel like Dave and I have this benefit where they get it. They're not going to give us a fucking hard time. They're not paying for anything. They're podcasters themselves. They know how it is. But even with my other podcasts, I mean, if I want to take a fucking week off, I don't even know that I need to tell you. Like, fucking, if you're going to leave me because I took a week off, go fuck yourself. You're a little too, you're expecting too much for paying absolutely nothing.
You're not doing podcasting sucks anymore, Tanner. It's Good Morning Podcasters, so it's the softer side.
Yeah, it's the softer side. Right, this is the softer side of Tanner.
Oh,
wow. Pixie, you jumped up here to speak. What do you got going on?
Hey, Jeff. Hi, guys. I am currently on podcast break, vacation. Sure, we'll call it that. And we did end the season 3 on a high note, and we said that we'd come back. So we are going to do a season 4, but we haven't got there yet, right? So we haven't. I think when you come back from a break, you have to do a couple of things. You got to do a new commercial. You got to probably do some new press. You got to market the show, get people, like, salivating and waiting for those things. I don't know if I would necessarily do, like, a whole re-release of an episode. Maybe if I cleaned it up, but I'm definitely in the I got to come back. I got to hit it. But I also got a new job. So I'm teetering between paying bills and being a podcaster. So that's where I'm at.
Hey, Pixie, same career, different place, or whole different career?
Whole new career, something that I haven't done yet. But
cool.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congrats.
Well, when you need money and you go back to your old job and it's just not what you want to do, you kind of have to figure things out. So that's where I'm at. I'm like, do I show up for podcasters, which I'm still doing my Wednesday show, but I'm not doing my main show. So I don't know. There's a lot of things to think about when you leave podcasting. Or
what I thought,
Pixie's going to send me on a tirade, be like, how come Pixie couldn't come to her audience and make a living? How come we can't make some fucking money, guys?
This is what I was going to.
Because I'm terrible at business. I'm just terrible at my business. Other people's business, I'm fantastic at.
What? I thought this was the get rich scheme. Like,
Yeah.
what are we all doing here?
This is the Tanner Campbell show.
Yeah,
Tell us,
that's
Tanner,
right.
how to get rich. No, but Pix, so how's the co-host handling your decision to do this? How's that going?
Well, I think he's moving forward with his podcast that we started in the beginning. and kind of refiguring out those. He's on his own now, so he has to like trek out there into wilderness and kind of figure it out for himself because we haven't talked in like 2 weeks. It's crazy.
Wow. So let me ask you this, because I know you and him, and I think we all have struggled with this when we've had a co-host. So you guys have different philosophies and views on, I guess, the podcast. So walk us through that a little bit, because I think we've all had that challenge. I mean, I've had a podcast with Tanner. It was very
Oh
challenging.
gosh, I'm sorry for you, Jeff.
I did all the fucking work, you douchebag.
So 2 months ago, for those of you that don't know, I came to the position where I was like, okay, we got all of the bugs out of the show. We sound good. We look good. We communicate really well together. I was like, this is the opportunity. We need to go out and find sponsors. We need to go out and do all of this for the podcast. I was like, hey, Mr. J, what do you think about that? And he goes, Pixie, the podcast is just a hobby. Yes, he wants to make money, but he wants people just to hand it to him. And I said, that's not really how it works. We got to go out there and we got to find people. We got to schmooze people, if you will. Get them involved in what we're creating. And he's all like, no, I don't want to do that. So as soon as he did that, it crushed me because I'm a pusher. Everybody knows I'm a pusher. And so I scaled back. I scaled back in my marketing. I scaled back in finding new friends. I scaled back in like everything. I basically gave up on the podcast in a way that I was just like, I'm done. And so we're gonna do another season, guys, because I can't give up on just at season 3.
That's a hard call. That's when you're in marriage counseling and you're like, well, I want kids, and the other person goes, no. You're like, okay, either I'm going to change my mind somewhere down the road, I'm not going to want money, and that could be. I always talk about the awkward conversation that any team that's doing a podcast, you got to have that awkward conversation to set expectations. Who's doing what? If we make money, who does it go to? And then once you get over that awkward conversation, then you can go back to having the fun. But otherwise, you end up. I mean, I work for a media host, and there are times when Ernie and Bert are really pissed at each other, and it gets ugly, and people are deleting files and changing passwords, and so you got to have now that agreeing on expectations isn't going to like make everything rosy because people are still going to get mad at each other, but at least you have maybe some expectations going in on who's doing what, and it's just ugly when it doesn't match up.
Yeah, I think a lot of that work before is real important, but then again, as time goes by, things change. What about you, Jim Mallard? You ever done a podcast with anybody else?
I actually have. That's where the Mallard Report came from because it went so ugly it turned sideways. And after about 8 weeks of that, I decided we're putting that on the shelf, and I started my own show. So I totally understand the Dave Jackson's point about marriage counseling because it ended in divorce. And sadly, I think that's how most shows with co-hosts do. I'm not saying all of them do, but I think that it's just like marriage. It's a lot of work, and boy, it's just a lot of work.
Well, and the other thing too is sometimes it's not an argument. It's like, hey, my spouse is pregnant and my life is going to change drastically. That's nothing kind of, you're not antagonizing somebody like, look, I have a life change and I can't do this anymore. And that's where you just kind of got to go, okay, well, I'm glad we sat down and had that conversation because right down here it says, what happens if somebody can't do the show? Oh, we decided that we'll reach out to the audience or whatever you're going to do to get a replacement. So
I don't know, Dave. I think shit, my partner's having a baby is a great name for a podcast. We're getting into reality shows and with audio now, right? That's the thing that's happening.
Podcasting and pregnant. I like it.
That's it.
That's a live stream I will not be attending.
Off the rails. You're requested to speak. What do you got going on? Thanks for joining us.
I'm sorry. Just turned my speaker on. I was listening to Pixie speak, and I actually had a question for her. about her partner that she's going through right now. And I was wondering if you think there's any sort of jealousy because Pixie is an adult film performer. Do you think that, like I obviously couldn't just post pictures and get 50,000 followers real quick? Do you think there's some sort of jealousy going on that you have an advantage over him and that may be making him salty?
Wait,
So
hold on. Pixie, did you jump from stage to screen?
No,
Yeah, I didn't know that.
no. So my co-host, he's a retired male entertainer. So he has done screen work. There's no jealousy between the two of us. It's just that we were on different paths. If I could get him to see this is how far we've come and this is where we could go, yes, it would work. But he, like I said, all he wanted to do was have the money come to him. And it just doesn't work that way. The money just doesn't fall in your lap.
I will say that Pixie also, it's just beyond posting pictures, she puts in the time here on Twitter to meet all these different people. So you do spend a lot of time doing that.
I wasn't saying that. I was just saying, like, do you think there could be a jealousy because she has an advantage?
No,
maybe.
he's a dinosaur and he hates social media. So he could care less about how many followers I have.
Well, then that's his own fault,
Fair enough. You have anything else off the rails before we go to Perry?
Go ahead, go to Perry.
Let's go to Perry.
Hey, so I may be taking us backwards because I was going to talk about during the off times, but I can also address some of the co-host stuff. So for me, in the off weeks or months, because I'm actually between seasons right now, I queue up either interviews that I haven't aired the full interview for, because I usually take snippets of interviews and bring those into my main show. So I'll get an edit of those and I'll do a quick, I'll spend maybe 10, 15 minutes recording a quick intro to that. I don't do all the sound design that I do in a normal show. And then I release that kind of on my normal schedule so the RSS feed stays alive. Then I also do a couple every now and then, if I don't want to go through the pain of editing a full interview, because I still don't let those be overly sloppy. I'll just put out something on that time schedule that's 5 or 10 minutes that just gives updates and says, hey, here's what's going on with me right now. We're in the process of getting ready for season 3. We've got this, X, Y, and Z going, and we really appreciate all your support and understanding while we're taking this time. And then encourage people to get in touch with me if they have any questions or want to connect in any other way. So I just do that. It keeps the RSS feed alive. The other thing that I do is there are 2 shows right now that I have in development where I am going to have a co-host, but there is definitely a power dynamic so that I can set the proper expectations, and that the co-host that I have is actually an employee of mine with the podcast company that I just started. So as far as setting expectations around who gets the final call and all of that, that's pretty well established, though we do work very well together and are very comfortable throwing ideas and kind of wrestling through those things. But if there's a final vote that needs to be cast, it's really clear that it's mine.
Well, don't overwork him, Perry, because he's my employee too.
I intend to work the heck out of that guy.
Perry, I did want to thank you for buying Tanner like 100 coffees. That was really nice of you. I don't know if he's ever thanked you or not.
Of course I've thanked him, you doofus.
No, that's a great point that you bring up there, Perry. It really is. Ashers, you are next. Perry, you can stick around, man, if you have anything else to talk about. Will.
Sure.
Okay, I'll go ahead and go. Tonight, it's Monday. It's my weekly episode recording night. And to be quite honest with you, and I'm just double checking, I know this is pre-recorded, but yes, okay. So what do you do when you don't record a great episode? I mean, I guess the simple answer is to just, do a new one. But when you're co-hosting a show with somebody else and they happen to think that the episode's great and it's not, that it's not targeted towards your typical audience and that it's going to bomb, I mean, you just kind of grin and bear it and wait until next week. I have a lot of guilt over it. I feel bad. Because we've had some episodes that I'm like, it could have been better, but like, this is terrible. So what do you guys do with that?
Well, I've had shows that I thought were going to be crickets, and people will say that was the best show ever. And I've had other shows that I'd worked on for weeks, and I'm like, man, I can't wait to hear the feedback, and it's just crickets. So I guess what's your planning process like? Because I'm thinking, did you know going into it that this isn't really on target?
Not really. The topic itself was pretty on target for the typical show. It was just that we ended up having a guest, and this particular guest has a really large social media following, but they're really good friends with my co-host. So instead of it being like, hey guys, let's stay on topic, it just was not at all. It was really all over the place. They just kept sharing stories of things that they did together, and it just was like two dudes having a conversation, which I guess I understand. Podcasts sometimes are like that, right? But it was just very different from the normal show, and it just doesn't feel like it belongs at all. And that kind of mindset I've gone into every episode that we've created is that this could be somebody's first time listening to the show. And if they listen to this, they're never coming back.
Yeah, but I think that's probably mitigatable. Is that a word? Mitigatable? Able to be mitigated with just a little pre-roll intro, like, hey, if this is your first time to the show, welcome. Just to let you know, everybody, this one's a little weird. Didn't go the direction that our shows usually go. So if this is your first time listening, maybe start somewhere else. And if this is your 10th time listening, just be prepared. This one's a little weird, but it's the way it came out, and hope you enjoy it all the same. And if you don't kill me.
I've never done that. I've always worried that if I brought it to attention, it would make it worse. Jim had his hand up, then Pixie did, then we'll go to Perry.
Yeah, I was going to say it's always awkward. That's why I try to avoid interviewing my friends, just because you get a little too comfortable in the subject matter. But Tanner does have a good point. You can just, if you're honest and put it up front, I think it'll turn out okay. And as I always say, I'm back next week. So,
what do you do, Jim? Hell, you're doing it live.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. That's why I just come up front and say, hey, I'm interviewing somebody I know fairly well. So some of you might be a little bit behind and not understand where we are because we've talked before. I'm diving a little bit deeper than I normally would with a guest right off the top, just based off my relationship with them.
You ever had one though that was just like going terrible? Like how'd you go about that live? Like not just like
well,
they
it wasn't
like
a friend, so that was the good news. I've only ever bailed on 2 guests live, and then I just started the old monologue. Potentially flip it to live calls, but yeah, it does happen, and that's where that live feedback comes from too. You can kind of tell what your listeners are thinking in real time, good, bad, and indifferent. So
I'm going to say this sounds like bonus content that you could put behind a paywall. If it's more in depth with your co-host and you can basically dissect it, you could give that extra bonus stuff to people who want to support your podcast.
I'd considered that because we just launched a Patreon. Well, I just launched one probably about 2 months ago, and it's going fairly well. And they seem to really like the off-kilter, off-topic stuff. How do I approach that then with my co-hosts and just be like, hey, that episode was terrible? I mean, I obviously I can't do that.
Well, now hold on a minute. If you thought the episode was terrible and it wasn't going to resonate with your audience, why the hell would you release it as a paywalled item? Don't do that.
Right. Here's something that really sucks. Enjoy.
Thanks for subscribing. Here's my work.
We do other stuff too. We'll do like these little slice of life kind of episodes that, again, we have a paranormal podcast, but he did an episode for the Patreon where he talked about the one time he filmed gay porn, and people like it. So
hold on, wait, okay, pause, sorry. Back up. Filmed or participated in?
He filmed it. He did not. At least I don't think he's participated in it yet. Maybe he has. He should tell that story on the Patreon next. But no, people like that because we'll kind of mention that stuff on the show itself, right? And then it's like, well, hey, if you want to hear Pat O talk about that time you filmed gay porn, go subscribe to Patreon and listen to it. And people will. So I don't know. It's something that I'm kind of dealing with, but the show comes out on Wednesday, so I think I better make a plan.
I've done the Tanner thing because my co-host about once a year goes to Boston to hang out at this cigar shop, which are good. And I know those guys too. And the first couple of times it was great because this guy is like a total independent business. And he's really taken kind of this indie attitude of growing his business now to growing his podcast. So he has all these stories, but there are times when I kind of subtly on StreamYard will take me off the screen and enlarge their screen because I'm like, I'm not in the show anymore, guys. Get the hint here. Like, throw me a bone. But on the other hand, if they're having a good conversation, it's fine. But I've done what Tanner does. I'm like, hey, today's a little different. Jim's in Boston with the cigar guys. And it's just enough to let people know. I don't know that I would say today's a little weird or today isn't going to be as good, or because that is kind of a thing where you're like, I don't know, it might be good. People are going to listen for the weird stuff. But I've done that thing where it's like, hey, today's a little different, just to throw it to, like you said, for that new person.
Hey, Ashers,
Yeah.
one thing that I've done that, on the surface seems a little bit weird, but it really helped the show is I will aggressively edit and then I'll add my own commentary to what they're talking about just to bring the show in line. It
Yeah.
might not be what really happened, but it's a performance for the audience. That's the way I think about it.
That was the other thing. You can edit out all the bro talk, edit it out, and just keep the good stuff.
Yeah, if they didn't give you a chance to talk, you have your chance in the edit.
Yeah, this is where Michael acted like a total bro. We're going to skip over that.
I actually do all of that. So if something isn't hitting right, then I'll change the question that somebody asked. Or put an interstitial in there with voiceover to bridge some things. But I'll also, if an episode is different than any other episode right up front, I'll just give folks a heads up, and I'll talk about why it's different or what makes it special in some way. So I've had a few very experimental episodes, and I always prefix those with some little thing that says, hey, here's what I'm trying this episode. If you don't like it or you want to try something else, feel free to go to another one. And then the other thing that I would really take on board is that Pixie's suggestion of just saying, this is bonus, whether you put it behind a paywall or not, you just labeling it as a bonus episode will make people think about it differently.
I think those are all really fantastic ideas. I think it's the first time, which I guess is a good thing. In 2 years of running this podcast, this is the first episode that I felt badly about putting up as the episode, which, is a win in a way. But yeah, gosh, they talked about music for like 45 minutes straight. And that's not what people come to this show to listen to. So I think I might try to cut it up and see what happens. But I just feel terrible. I feel like I didn't have a win this week. And I don't like that.
Well, not that I'm advocating putting out not so great content, but I think we've all probably read books where, whatever, there's 8 chapters and chapter like 6 was like, meh, all right, that's 10 minutes I can't get back. So I say that to say that they all can't be aces, not that we want to get in the habit of like, it's good enough, but don't beat yourself up too much.
I gotcha. I appreciate it.
That was a great question, though, because I think we all have experiences where we're like, well, this doesn't seem like the best thing I've ever put out. What should I do? Like, I once had a podcast episode with Tanner. He dropped about 17 F-bombs. Then halfway through, he said, am I allowed to cuss on this podcast? So,
well,
you knew it going into it, man. That's your fault.
The thing I do, because we all run into this thing, it's a situation we've all been in where somebody requests to be on the show. You kind of check them out. It seems like it's a good fit. They come on and it's either A, they have just not listenable audio, or they're just, it's just not a good fit. And we're back to Pixie's situation where you're like, do I release this? So if I'm interviewing somebody I've never met and I didn't ask you to come on the show, I always send back, I'm like, hey, if you're cool with the fact that since I don't know you, I reserve the right to not publish our episode in the event I don't feel you've delivered value to my audience, then here's the scheduling link. And I've only had one person. So like, what do you mean, dude? And I was like, hey, if you don't think you can deliver value, then don't sign up, and it kind of separates, for lack of a better phrase, this is not gender friendly, but the men from the boys, right? It's like, if you haven't figured out who my audience is and you can deliver value, well, then don't come on my show. But it's a cool safety net.
Is it kind of important here to maybe also point out that we're acting like we're all pretty important? Like, these podcasts are, come on, we're not running multi-billion-dollar companies and people aren't going to lose their job. And I think it's important also sometimes to just remember to not take ourselves too seriously. Ultimately, 90% of the time you want to show up and you want to do great. But, if you got to phone it in every now and then, you shouldn't be thinking, oh no, Jim in accounting is certainly going to lose his job over this.
Yeah, that's a great point. There are times when we have to go, yeah, it's a podcast.
The poor accountants. It's always them in marketing.
Podcasting Power Hour is part of Indie Drop-In Network. If you are a podcaster looking to grow your listeners, check out IndieDropIn.com. Indie Drop-In is always free, and we have opportunities right now for comedy, true crime, scary, and paranormal podcasts. Just go to IndieDropIn.com to learn more.
If anybody else has anything they want to ask or discuss, go ahead and feel free to speak.
Oh, can I ask one?
Absolutely, Dave.
Let's do it.
Jeff, you have a Patreon account with a $1 option. And I just wanted everybody, because here's my opinion. Not that what you're doing is wrong. It's just a thought. I feel that anybody that would give you $1 would give you $5, and you're going to lose most of that dollar to processing fees.
Yeah, but nobody will even give him $1.
He's priced it at what it's worth.
Okay.
No, I mean, I will say my feeling on Patreon, and you have a valid point, is I'm always skeptical of just like creating a bunch of extra content. To me, it's really about support for the creator. So, I mean, it's already hard enough to make a damn podcast. So, doing extra stuff seems about impossible for me right now. I don't know how you.
I don't know that you need to do a lot of extra stuff for Patreon. I'm saying that thinking about creating one right now. So listen to my ignorance, but I support a bunch of folks on Patreon. Like you said, I gave Tanner a whole bunch of coffees just because I want to support the person. And so if somebody has multiple tiers, they've got a $5 tier and a $20 tier, I'll give them the $20 and I'll never listen to anything or go to the Patreon page ever again.
Yeah, I had a weird situation with my Patreon where and again, if we could do air quotes here, my competition, people that are basically doing the exact same thing I'm doing, were giving me $20 to promote them to my audience on a show where I was trying to get clients. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to get a lot more than $20 if I get a client out of this. And so I first put I reserve the right to not accept your patronage. And that just seemed weird. And so I just went to my patrons and said, here's the deal. I'm turning it off, except for there are 2 people that we treat as sponsors. And I said, the way this was kind of set up, the whole patronage is supposed to be, I'm giving you money so you can do your art. And I lost one person, but it was just a case where that's something you want to think about if you're setting up a Patreon, that you might want to put a line in there again that says, I reserve the right to not accept your patronage in the event people are trying to basically get in front of your audience. It's like a really cheap advertisement.
It's a good idea, Dave. I should have considered that.
The other thing I've heard from other folks who I've talked to who have Patreon is that every now and then they'll put out a piece of content, and what they see is that people start to unsubscribe. So sometimes if you just have a Patreon that floats and charges people $5 a month and you never do anything with it, they'll just let you charge that indefinitely. But as soon as you put out a piece of content and it emails everybody, they go, oh, who's that Jeff guy? I forgot about him. And then they unsubscribe.
I think I remember reading the statistics on such a little amount of extra content actually gets consumed that's produced and released on there. Ariel, go ahead. You have your hand up.
Yeah, I just made a post about Patreon today because I've had a Patreon for my newsletter for about 4 years, and I've never pushed it ever. Maybe I've put a few quote unquote ads in my newsletter or on social media, but I've never once been like, okay, this is going to be a stream of my income or even a supplemental. I've just been like, okay, if people want to support me, this is a way that they can support me. And I decided, and so the tiers are $2, $5, $10, and $20. And I've had some people who have been supporting at $10 for 4 years, which adds up. But most people will come in and out, do $2 for a few months, $5 for a few months, things like that. But what I did start doing yesterday in my newsletter was I'm going to try for a month to just be very transparent about how many patrons I have. how much they're paying me, not individually. I don't want to give away personal, this person's contributing $2, but I am going to say week by week how much I'm making, just to see if maybe the transparency is something that people are interested in from a podcast creator's perspective.
Never tried that before. Has anybody else tried that? I'm curious how that'll go.
Actually, Ariel, would you be interested in doing a side-by-side with you and your Patreon and me and my Substack?
Is that a competition? Because no, I'm scared of a competition.
No, not a competition, but like maybe to see. I don't. Well,
yeah, I'm down.
Competition of platforms, not competition of us.
Yeah, I'm down. Let's talk about it.
That'd be cool.
I have two shows I listen to. One is No Agenda, and the other one is Podcasting 2.0. And both have No Agenda has a huge audience, and they have a thing where if you donate $250 or more, they will kind of give you a shout out at the beginning of the show as an associate producer. And then they have a thing towards the end where anybody above $50, and it's a huge show. And if you end up donating, they have a whole thing where they track how much you've given them. And if you've given them over $1,000, they knight you as a knight of the No Agenda Roundtable, which is all great. The whole strategy is called value for value. But the problem is the more popular you are and the more successful you are, is people going, wow, I can't get this information anyplace else. You end up with this giant chunk of your show that's just you going, Jim in Poughkeepsie, thanks so much for the $50. And, Natalie in New Zealand, thanks so much for the, 7556. I don't know what that stands for, but it's fun. So
yeah,
it's a catch-22.
To add that one of the things that I do, I don't give them nothing in return for becoming a patron. I think I need to reassess my tiers. And I actually, at Podcast Movement in 2018, they had somebody from Patreon. Yeah. They had a whole room from Patreon who did like an audit of your Patreon, which was really cool. So there are some people who can be like, okay, it's kind of like a pricing model. So what are people going to be attracted to? Why does this $2 tier with these 3 bullet points make more sense than this $5 tier with these 6 bullet points for your needs? For that's if you're really looking to get something out of your patronage of this person. But what I am doing is I have a section on my website that sort of looks like James Cridland's bottom of his newsletter, where it's the logo soup of all the people who contribute to Pod News. But I have that on my website at earbuds.audio/Patreon, so that I can point to that and be like, look at all my supporters, yay. But mostly, so that they get a backlink, and that's powerful.
Off the rails, go ahead. I know you've had your hand up for a minute.
Oh, I was just wondering about Patreon, and I'm a Wisconsin podcast, and we've won Best Wisconsin Comedy Podcast 3 years in a row, but it kind of seems like the only people that get Patreon subscribers are states that touch an ocean. Does anybody else find that the flyover states just don't get Patreon?
I would kill to see that data. If that's true, that would be so crazy.
Has the internet made it there? That's the question.
Hey,
yes, they have, but I have $3 from 3 people from Patreon in 5 years. Everybody talks about Patreon, and one of my mentors is from Washington, D.C. She's like, yeah, that's the way to go, Patreon. And it's like, it never got to hear that that's how you support artists. So I'm just like, do you guys really even know that it doesn't get to the middle of the country? This is kind of like a weird thing on the oceans.
Anybody who ever said, yeah, Patreon's the way to go as their primary advice probably shouldn't be your...
I was thinking that same thing. I'm so glad that you said it, because I was scared to say
said it wrong because I don't have a lawyer writing exactly what I'm saying. Sorry, I meant that Patreon does not help us. It does not help people in the middle.
What do you want Patreon to help you with? Are you trying to make money?
I don't know. I just know that I've been doing a podcast for 5 years, and I heard Patreon helps. And
helps what?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
what you
so
want extra shows? I don't even know.
Here are some questions.
Okay. I just want to say before you really start, before you ask these questions, I want to say that if I did a circle and just made a wider circle, I would have to get to like 8 million people before one person heard of Patreon. How do we get Patreon out?
Where in Wisconsin are you based?
Southeastern, just north of Milwaukee.
Okay, there's definitely people near Milwaukee that have heard of Patreon. What's your show about?
Comedy.
Okay. Sure. How many downloads do you get per episode? If you don't feel like sharing, you can DM me and I will happily give you some more advice off the live session. But my thought here is
200K.
Okay, per episode.
Wait,
Yeah.
I
Per
love when this happens. This is my favorite shit.
200,000 downloads per episode, and almost zero are converting to patrons.
It's
I doubt that.
Yeah,
okay.
that's because
Hold on.
I'm going to say not
I just got
200,000 per
17
month. Because
No, hold on. I'm 200,000 on 5 years. That's what I'm looking at right now.
look, go to your who's your media host.
God damn it! You're making me get my technical shit. I have to go upstairs and get my woman.
Well, here's the thing that nobody talks about. Is when I did a bunch of research on this, the average percentage of people that sign up is around 3%. When I talked to the people at Teachable, they said 2%. And I remember once I was listening to Radio Lab, and Radio Lab is one of those shows that when you say Radio Lab, if you're in front
Radio
of a
Lab is my mentor. Autumn Fisher from Radio Labyrinth is my mentor.
See, exactly. That's what I said. When you say Radio Lab in front of somebody, if they're a fan, they have to say, "Oh my God, Radio Lab." Radio Lab, one time I was listening, was doing a thing kind of like PBS. They're like, "Hey, if you enjoy the show, we're trying to get up to 1%." And so for whatever they were using. But crowdfunding it's a cool thing when you're doing the empowering show where you talk to entrepreneurs so they can empower other entrepreneurs and blah, blah, blah. And it sounds like every other podcast out there. Not that those are bad, but it's not content that you can't get anyplace else. And that's where you go, well, since you're not a running show where you can maybe get a shoe sponsor, it's hard to kind of package motivation in a bottle and go, here, buy one, get one free. It's a bottle of motivation. So that's where Patreon comes in.
We're sponsored by Coldwell Banker.
Well, yeah. Well, there you go.
So then my question becomes, why do you want to do Patreon? Because if you have money coming in and you don't necessarily, it might even be bothering the people who are listening to your show. It might be putting them off.
Come in.
Sorry?
I said, who doesn't want more money? You always think in more ways, right?
There are some trade-offs here. Like if you're making money and, yes, of course, it's great to make money. It's great to make more money. But if you're hitting people with a 30-second pre-roll or a mid-roll or a post-roll, whatever it is, telling them about Patreon and nobody's converting, I would either drop that for a little bit and try again in a few months with different messaging, or I would try again with different messaging right now and with different perks.
Okay.
Yeah, because she's got the point. If nobody knows what Patreon is, it's because you're not telling them. You really have to treat it like a sponsorship. And you have to explain how they're going to benefit. Hey, if you like this show, but you hate the ads, and you have to be careful about that because you don't want to demonize your sponsors because they don't really like that a whole lot. If you want us to get rid of these really crappy ads, hey, thanks, guys. And then you have to treat it like a sponsorship and explain how they're going to be, if you want it ad free, it's bonus content. We do a monthly roundtable, whatever it is. Or if you just want to, help me support my art, but you have to mention it to them because, if, there are a lot of people that know what Patreon is, but there are a lot of people that are like, Patra, what? So you gotta treat it like an ad.
It felt like at the time we were doing a lot of stuff for Patreon, and then at the end of the month, it'd be like, congratulations, here's your $2. You did 95 hours of work. And we're like, what? That was dumb. Let's not ever do that again.
Don't do it. Don't do it unless you've got patrons.
Okay.
I do want to go to Ed. He's been waiting patiently. You say it depends how you pitch it too. Is that what you said, Perry?
Yeah. I was just gonna say it could be. Hey, you know what? We get sponsorship from Caldwell Banker. That does a lot to help us, but it doesn't cover all the bills. If you really like this content and you want to support us, you can go to our website /support, and we'll hit you up with a Patreon or glow.fm or however you want to do that, and then get them in that way.
Don't say glow.fm just because Dave's here.
We're gonna.
Well, no, there's less of a barrier to entry with something like that than there is Patreon. You don't have to create another account, so it depends on friction as well.
But there's also Supercast, which doesn't mean you need an extra host.
Right.
So there are other options out there.
There's also like memberful.com. You could have people just be members. There's tons and tons of ways for people to pay you a little bit extra to support you.
All right, I'll try this again. No, that's all great information. Ed, I know you've been waiting patiently. You got to walk the dogs, so we'll let you go ahead and go, man.
Oh, actually, I already came back home from walking the dogs. That's how I got lost your connection the first time, because I hit a dead spot during the walk. But my question to Off the Rails would be, when you did have the Patreon the first time, how did you sell it on your show?
When we had the Patreon the first time, we used to do a movie review show called Movies with Mark.
No.
Metcalf.
I'm asking, how did you pitch it to your audience on the show?
Oh, I just said, this is secret. If you guys want it, you can only have it on Patreon.
Okay, yeah. See, it wasn't that they didn't hear Patreon. You didn't explain to them what Patreon does. What I would suggest is find 5 or 6 shows that do Patreon and listen to how they pitch it. One of the shows I'm going to suggest to you right now is a show called You Must Remember This. It's a great movie history show hosted by Karina Longworth, who's a very respected critic. She's actually married to Rian Johnson, who did Knives Out and The Last Jedi. She doesn't need the money per se, but she does a Patreon because she wants to properly support the staff that works with her on the show. So just go listen to any episode of You Must Remember This. Listen to the last 5 minutes and listen to the way that she pitches it. It doesn't matter if you're going to go with Patreon or membership or buy me a coffee or whatever. Listen to how other people who are successful with Patreon are pitching Patreon to their listeners and potential subscribers, and then figure out how you can do something like that. Because if you just say, hey, there's this secret thing that if you join Patreon you can do, that doesn't entice people. You need to make it so freaking awesome that giving you guys $5 a month for some bonus content and extra views or whatever it is that you're going to give them for $5 or $10 or $20 a month, you need to sell it. And you need to make sure that you sell it so beautifully that they can't help but join. Because if you just say, oh, it's a secret thing, come join it, that would never entice me. But I'm a Patreon of You Must Remember This because the way that she sells it, the way that she says, this is how awesome this thing is if you do it.
I would also say that
Thank you.
I've had a lot of luck with, and Perry can talk to this because Perry's in my Discord.
And he bought you 1,000 coffees.
And he bought me 1,000 coffees. Well, that was in Perry. Remind me. I'm pretty sure that was in trade for a consult.
Not necessarily a consult. I think you answered one of my questions on the show, and I was just like, all right.
I thought we talked about the booth or something.
Did we? Maybe
Yeah.
so. I know I've done buy me a coffee for you a couple times, so I lose track.
Perry's the nicest guy in this room. But so with Discord, which I think probably everybody here knows is like an alternative to Slack, I just what is it called? Stripe has recently brought out something called payment links. Stripe used to kind of be a pain in the ass to take payments. You have to issue an invoice, and it's kind of like a mature solution for selling things online. And it usually works in the back end where you have something like Shopify handling the front end. But a few months ago, maybe longer than that, they rolled out payment links, kind of like what PayPal used to have. So what I do now is I have a link in the description of every episode that'll say like join the Discord, and that takes them to a payment page where they just enter in their payment details. It's recurring for $3 a month, and as soon as they submit the payment, they get a like a receipt or a response says, hey, thanks, your payment went through. Click this link and you'll be automatically added to the Discord. And that's been pretty helpful for me. I mean, it's been a good way to grow my Discord, and it's not a lot of effort. I mean, Perry will tell you, everybody in that group, I check in probably once a day, twice a day, maybe less frequently than that. And a lot of the value in that group comes from, like, for example, Perry, he talked about that podcasting company he just started. It was born from a relationship between him and the person he hired that started in that Discord server. So a lot of the times the value can be just in connecting your community with itself. And you don't have to necessarily be doing a whole bunch of extra fucking work, which I hate.
I'd swear they're paying you there at Discord. My God.
I don't even know how Discord makes money.
Can I ask Tanner a quick question here?
Yeah.
For that, do they need to enter in a new payment, or is it connected to PayPal as well? Because a lot of people can just click, enter my PayPal,
No,
or do they have to enter a whole new credit card and stuff?
Stripe doesn't take PayPal, so they would be greeted with essentially a very simple screen that says name, credit card number, submit payment, and it's really that simple. But they can't pay with PayPal; they have to pay with a credit card.
Yeah, Stripe's a PayPal competitor. And we were talking about people that are successful with Patreon. If you want to become completely suicidal, check out the website Graph, so GRAPH, graphtreon.com. And if you go to advanced filters, you can say, just show me podcasts. And right now, the one that's showing it, the number one, the Tim Dillon Show, never heard of it, 45,527 patrons getting $221,445 a month.
Yeah, I actually shared a post from him today. I didn't realize he was a well-known person.
But that's a place where I'll go to say, like, okay, what are these guys doing that they're getting? I know El Chapo House, somebody told me they do like a PBS thing where they just do an episode that's like, we're not coming back until we get X amount of patrons. And I was like, well, that's a little different.
If anybody else has anything they want to ask, go ahead and request to speak. But we are going to go to the greatest song ever sung. Greatest song, you know what I mean. The greatest song ever sung poorly. Sorry, you've been waiting patiently. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jeff. Just going back to the whole Patreon thing that you guys were talking about, and setting your prices too small. I think that's the thing that it's not just a podcasting thing. It's a thing where people are not used to sales type of thing. So I was at a concert this weekend, not related to the podcast at all, and there was a charity table there, and great charity, and the artist was supporting it, and it was wonderful. And they weren't making any money. So my obnoxious ass, as Tanner will tell you, I'm very obnoxious in large groups. I just started carnival barkering for them and calling people over. And I'm like, yeah, and you can take all of the swag back with you for $50. And the person running the table was like, but it's only $40. I'm like, it's not 40 anymore. It's 50 now. And we ended up raising, I don't know, like $400 in the time that I sat there for this queer charity in Maryland. It's just, if you ask with enough energy and confidence, people will just pay it. That's the secret. That's it. It's that simple.
Well, I think it's that if you, I don't know if it's that if you say it with enough energy, people will pay it. I just think it's no matter what the price is, somebody's willing to pay it, and you got to let them know about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think go ahead, Dave.
Go ahead, Ari.
Just was going to say, I think with everything in podcasting, probably with everything in life, I'm still young, I don't know. It's all about experimenting and trying something for 3 months, seeing if that works. And that is as large as having a Patreon at all, and as small as your actual words in your call to action for your Patreon. Try something, see if it works. Try it at the beginning of the show, try it at the end of the show, try it at the middle of the show. Lots of different things that you can do to potentially persuade some people. And then once you get those people, you've got to do account management. So a lot to go into it, and it might be worth it to spend your time looking for ads rather than looking for patrons. But of course, that's another thing to consider.
So also, I'll add on to that, and then I swear, Jeff, I'll shut up and let you do whatever you're going to do next. You could offer, this is something that I do through my podcast. It's the only thing I ever sell to podcasters. And when you hear the price, you probably think it's ridiculous, but you could do the same thing. You know a lot about comedy. Maybe there's a potential for you to teach a comedy class or something. But I teach a class on audio engineering, and I charge what will now be $13.40 for it. And that $13.40 includes RX9 standard. So that's like a $400 piece of software, a 1-year license to Persona Studio One. It includes all these extras to make it worth that much. And kind of going into what Greatest Song Ever Sung Poorly, see, I wanted to say it right, said, it's, if you ask, there are people who will say yes, but you got to ask, and you got to have it structured such that it's easy for them to enroll in whatever it is that you're selling or participate.
And I mean, with anything, it does have to provide a value. So like just the secret content is probably, if that's how it's being sold, that's probably not enough. I don't want secret content. I want to know what that content is. I want to know why that appeals to me. I want to know how that speaks to what I will spend money on.
and you have to do that. Going back to sales, I hear people, and the problem is the minute we start promoting ourselves, we feel salesy. And I'll hear people, because I'll be like, hey, don't forget to remind your your listeners to share it with somebody. And their pitch will be like, hey, like if you, maybe kind of want to, like, you don't have to, but like, if you want to, like, if somebody like, and then they'll say our website is .com. And I'm like, wait, what? But if you said, hey, if you like the show today, we're at 18 minutes. If you know somebody else that would like this, could you go to your app and just hit the share button? It would mean the world to me. And so I think that's a big part of it too. I think anytime anybody tries to promote themselves, the pitch is just like cringeworthy.
I had a thread going on Twitter for a while that I would comment on every time a call to action in a podcast made me stop and actually do that call to action. So think about that as you're listening to podcasts over the next few days. I think that's something to keep in mind is why would you stop doing what you're doing, which is listening to a show? Maybe you're washing the dishes, maybe you're out on a walk, doing whatever. Why would you stop doing what you're doing, pause the podcast, navigate over to the website that they told you to go to? What was it about that made you want to do that? I'll just tell you one that stuck out to me. It was a Patreon call. It was PRX Radiotopia's big fundraiser that they do every year. And I was listening to the podcast This Day in Esoteric Political History. And they said that if you give at $2 a month to Radiotopia, you get to see This Day in Esoteric Political History's map of their upcoming episodes, and you can contribute to that map. And I was like, that is cool. I want to have, a part in this show that I love. So that was something that was interesting to me. That's something that made me pay money right then and there. So just over the next few days, think about that and tweet me. I would love to know what makes you want to do something.
All right, we've got time for one more. The Blue Collar Enlightenment Show. Please tell me it's not something about Patreon, or we're going to have to rename it Patreon Power Hour.
No, sir, I'm not going to do that to you. I'm going to try to revert back to the sponsorship thing. And my question is, once you find your potential sponsors, how do you even go about contacting them and selling your podcast to try to make that money? And, how much do you take and how much do you give?
Oh, boy. Is this me, Jeff?
You can start it out. We got to get Jim Mallard in here at some point. He's just sitting there. I don't know what he's doing.
Well, I'm not a Patreon guy, so I was just taking that part of the conversation in. So you want to know about the sponsorship thing? This is my 2 cents on that, and I'll let somebody else who's probably smarter talk about this. But I never use the word sponsorship when I'm pitching somebody. It's always a partnership because they can do. Obviously, they're doing the money for me, but I'm going to do something for them, and whatever. I mean, it depends on the deal. Depends on your show. I know there's CPMs out there for podcasters, but sometimes, the person's running the small business or an author and just trying to get going, and you want to help them, so you go a little low. And sometimes, they got more money than brains, and you want to go a little high. So, yeah, it's all, and maybe I'm looking at that totally backwards, but that's just how I run.
Are you a first time? Are you a first time podcaster? Like how far along in the podcasting process are you going to these sponsors?
I'm going on 4 months, but this is kind of a long-term goal for me. So I want to be able to have that knowledge when I get to that step.
Tell me what the show is about, and tell me who the target sponsor is.
My show it's kind of in the title. I'm a blue collar guy, and I'm searching for answers in the world and enlightening myself on how people go about their entrepreneurship. Every story is different, and you always learn something new. And so that's what my show is about.
And who is you don't have to give the name of the company necessarily, but how does the sponsor that you're thinking about approaching align with that mission?
Well, mine would be for the blue collar workers, like the blue collar way, like Carhartt, Atwood, those type of chains.
Oh, I kind of like that. So I almost think that your show title doesn't do enough to explain that this isn't necessarily a philosophy show. It's a show about learning how to be an entrepreneur, but starting out as a blue collar, maybe labor worker, and becoming an entrepreneur and making your own life. Am I right about that?
You are exactly right.
Yeah, I don't know. When I read your title, I thought, oh, this is a blue collar guy having philosophical discussions about philosophy, not necessarily about entrepreneurship. So there might be a potential opportunity to improve the name of the show, especially since you're only 4 months in. But I think that you could approach, so long as you can make it clear what the match was, you could approach somebody like Carhartt or whoever. I like to tell people who are going for their first sponsorship to go for about 10,000 for the year, and to not focus on the number of downloads that they have because they're new, and of course they can't do that. There's no value. But it's all about the fit between your content, the potential of what you'll do in your first year, and the value of the sponsorship to Carhartt. I guess in this example, usually the sponsor needs to have a more expensive product than what Carhartt's average product cost probably is. John Deere might be a good fit for that too, but I think Carhartt's more like blue collar. John Deere probably doesn't really get into sponsoring podcasts too much. I'd say go for 10,000. I could probably walk you through a more detailed process if you wanted to reach out to me. I won't charge you anything. I'll just talk to you. But I've helped people do this in the past.
He won't charge you anything, but he would love it if you bought him about 100 coffees. Greg,
you know I don't even use Buy Me a Coffee anymore, right?
Oh, come on, Dan.
If
I
you
use
got
NFTs now.
If
That's
you got
my new
$4,
thing.
you can chat with him on Discord.
Yeah, exactly.
It's $3.
Hey, he already said it was free.
Yeah, it's free, man.
So I'm gonna take that and run with it.
Greg, you have anything to throw in here?
I mean, I have lots of comments about this. I mean, Indie Drop-In was booked up on sponsorships for, I don't know, maybe 9 months. It's a little bit light right now, but one thing I think is good is that you have to figure out what value your listeners, like you have to have the value for your listeners, but also for the brand, right? So if it's Carhartt, I think that you would have to really be able to sell them on what the vision is. Like, why would a blue collar worker who wants to move into entrepreneurship, why would they pick Carhartt? Are they still, working in the foundry, or are they starting up their whatever tool and die business or whatever it is they're doing?
Yeah, are you going to the point where, are you thinking does Carhartt have emerging entrepreneur program? Are you trying to think of something like that?
Yeah. I'm trying to think of, because you're brand new, and I think it's a mission that some of these folks might want to gamble on while you're still building your show. But you have to get the niche, and this is, Tanner was spot on with this. I'm just going to make sure it's as clear as it can be. Your niche has to be razor sharp to get solid sponsors, right? You have to be talking about the blue collar angle for lifting yourself out of the whatever labor world you're in, and building a business. Like every single show has to have that theme. And then once you have that, then you can go pitch that vision to sponsors, and you could ask for something like $10,000 or even more, because they might believe in that mission, but that has to be right. Like, you have to really figure out what the value is for both people. Like, will your people buy it? And one trick I use that I can't get Tanner to acknowledge as genius is I test it with affiliate marketing, right? So I'll go find something that resonates, and my true crime show is a good thing. I found a good test. I went and just signed up for Amazon affiliates, and I pitched a book on true crime to see what my conversion ratio would be if I pitched it exactly like a sponsor. So I could go to a sponsor and say, I have a 3.5% conversion rate, which is 2% more than the average. And I can ask for $50 per 1,000 downloads as an example. And that's a real life example. So there's millions of things you can do, but I'll go to Ariel since she has her hand up.
Just wanted to add that I think one of the mistakes that podcasters make is thinking that monetizing means you've made it, or getting a sponsor means you've made it, whatever made it means to you. And somebody was getting at this before, but I think what's really important to consider is, will your audience convert? Yes, brand awareness is something that some brands want to go after, but when you're in talks with potential sponsors for your show, you should talk about, who is your audience? Are they likely to convert? And I would definitely test that out with affiliate links, or asking them to do something that maybe doesn't have a monetary value, like I don't know, a free tier, coming to your website and taking a survey, something that you're asking them to do something maybe in exchange for the chance to win an $100 Amazon gift card, something like that, that brings them somewhere so that that they're engaged, because you do not want to enter into a partnership with a brand and not have your ads convert for that brand, because then you're gonna charge them $10,000 for a season and it brings them nothing. You definitely don't want that. So I think before anything, definitely do some big testing. And you did not say that you were, looking to do this right away, and you're looking to get all the information that you can. And I think that's great. But I would take all of this into account, and especially just the don't do it too early, because you want to be hearing from your listeners, so much so that that when you tell them to go buy something, a good percentage of those people will go buy something. And then they're going to tell you about it. And then they're going to tell other people about it. And not all that is trackable, but it's still something that comes from you.
And you can do that affiliate marketing, by the way, right now. Like, it's never too early to start testing that stuff, in my opinion.
And this isn't exactly right, but maybe from blue collar to boardroom, like something more like that for the name of your
I
show.
love that. That is a vast improvement.
It can't be boardroom though, because he's entrepreneur and nobody wants to get in the fucking boardroom because
Right.
it's terrible places. But something like that.
From boardroom to boss.
Blue collar to beach.
Oh no. Oh well, that sounds like a retirement show. But from blue collar to boss, that does sound good. That's pretty good, Greg.
Yeah.
All right, Perry.
So on the monetization piece, I'd just say that there's a couple other points to think about. One is, if you're going to people, you can always pitch exclusive sponsor versus diversity of sponsors. So you can say, hey, here's what I can sell this season to you exclusively for X amount, whatever that is. Or you can be one of a series of sponsors, and I'll offer 5 sponsor spots. But if they're wanting real clear brand alignment with that, then they will pay a certain rate to be able to lock you in, so that some of their competitors can't have their voices heard. The other thing you definitely should do, especially if you get an exclusive sponsor, is let them know that part of the success of your show, even though you're pitching them, part of your show's success depends on them. So if they're sending out a newsletter, your podcast, they're helping grow your show so that you can take canal of their prospects. And I think that creates a little bit of a virtuous cycle, and also shows your value and keeps them engaged over time as well.
Uncle Dave, what do you think?
And be sure to test the product first. When I was talking with people like Glenn the Geek and other people that had sponsors, because the problem is, if you promote a product and you're like, this is the best thing since sliced bread, and then your audience buys it and they go, wow, this is absolute crap. And then you come up, hey, we got a new sponsor. This thing is awesome. And they go, yeah, I'm not buying that. Like, you lose your integrity. So don't get blinded by the dollar signs to promote something that you wouldn't, give to your mom.
Wouldn't getting these bigger sponsors kind of help with your numbers as well? Because they wouldn't be marketing you at all.
Not at all.
Not at all.
If anything, they'll go down. Now, again, going back to what Ariel said, sponsorship does not equal success. Having an engaged audience who will listen to what you say, buy what you say to buy, that's success. And it really comes down to your why. I mean, I don't normally look at my numbers, and I was looking at my numbers today, and in some places they went down, but I don't do the show for advertising. I'm advertising my own stuff, and my membership numbers went up. And I'm like, so I'm happy as a clam, because I'm doing it to increase my membership site. if I was doing it for ads and focusing on download numbers, I'd be, oh my God, they went down 2%.
I think these are all valid points, and this has been an awesome hour. A little too much Patreon for my liking, but nevertheless, we will get past that. No, go ahead, Dave.
I have one quick question.
Yes.
I hear Ariel everywhere I go, and I'm dying to know if I've ever met you in person, because if so, I can't remember it.
Oh, definitely.
Okay, because I'm like, it's like I see her all the time, and I'm like, it sounds familiar. I need to go find your picture.
Yeah, I work for Squadcast. I'm sure we've been at events together.
I knew that, yeah. So, and I know you do the whole sounds profitable thing. And I was like, man, she's everywhere. I'm like, I've probably met this person. So, all right. That's all I had, Jeff. Thanks.
Dave, did that confirmation do anything? Like, that's my worst nightmare. When I go, have I met you? They go, yeah. I go, oh, I'm terrible at this.
No, my problem is that I remember faces and names extremely well. So it's often creepy. I'll go up to people and be like, we met at this place and doing that. And we talked about this. And they'll be like, what? And I'm like, okay, just ignore me.
It's demoralizing for me.
I am the opposite. I won't remember your name or face, but the minute you show me your artwork for your podcast, I'm like, oh, you're that. Okay. Yeah. So
you're like, oh, we have met before. I got to go.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeff.
Losing your mind, Dave. How can you not remember her? Mark Beander, why are you jumping up here? What do you get to throw in?
Well, I heard Ariel works for Squadcast, and me, a bit of a selfish question here with me running and building Podtricks. I've been thinking about building an integration with Squadcast as far as getting the recordings directly into the system. I was curious as to who I need to talk to get that process started.
Yeah, I got you. We have a public. I'm going to say the wrong acronyms, either SDK or API. I'm not really sure, but I know that you can integrate. I'm on the people side of things, so excuse me for not knowing. If you email rockwell@squadcast.fm, he will tell you everything you need to know, and feel free to DM me for that.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
So before we go, does anyone else want to come up and buy or sell something to anyone on the stage? Just last call. Last call.
Yeah. Don't give Tanner the opportunity here.
Can I try to get people to check out Uncut FM to just see it, which is a terrible name and everybody's probably giggling, but I'm experimenting with it and I'm having some amount of luck and it's pretty cool. So if you're into finding, it's a platform that allows you to create an NFT membership card, and then somebody can just use a regular debit card to purchase an NFT with crypto, but they never realize they're doing it. So the really low tech person who doesn't understand the space can still participate. It's basically Patreon, but the key is an NFT instead of, like a dollar bill. It's kind of interesting.
Does it integrate?
I don't consult for them.
That's what we need.
I don't consult for them. I don't work for them. There's no benefit for me if you go check it out. I just think it's cool. And I'm having some luck with it. So look into it if you like.
What'd you have for dinner?
What did I have for dinner? I had what did I have? I had zoodles. I had zoodles for dinner.
You had something vegan, I'm sure.
What's zoodles?
Zoodles are zucchini noodles.
Okay.
They were all right.
Okay, I respect it. I went to an Ethiopian restaurant that had some vegan stuff. It wasn't that bad.
We've got a great Ethiopian place right around the corner. I keep meaning to go, but I seem to never get there when they're open. They keep odd hours, but it always smells great when I walk by.
Oh my God. The place that we got, it was hilarious. So we're like mid-stroke COVID, whatever, but we happened to be able to get into this place, whatever. The dude showing us how to eat the food, it was crazy. It was crazy. I was thinking the whole time I'm going to die, but it was worth it. So what up?
I just feel like Asher's right now. I totally get her question. Going off track. No one remembers Asher's first question.
No. I got you.
I'm nodding my head, just being polite.
Well, do you have anything else? Did you have a question or anything, or do you just want to know what Tanner and his dog steals all of his food, what they ate for dinner?
I mean, is there anything you guys want to talk about? I'm all ears.
Well, we're about to put a ribbon on this bad boy. We've been at it for going on an hour and a half now. So, I mean, had to come back next Monday. Keep you waiting.
So, join the Patreon for the extended power, 2 hours.
Exactly. On that note here, I will go ahead and give my closing thoughts on this evening. I think that I learned that this podcasting power hour is sponsored by Patreon, Discord, and Squadcast, it seems like, unofficially. But no, seriously, I think important thing to remember is that there's a lot of great people up here, but not everything works for everybody that's being said. And everybody kind of has their own path, but you really got to be willing to continue to learn and try things to grow. So it may not work out for you exactly, but consider everything and just don't be afraid to keep learning every day. I think that's absolutely critical. Ariel Nissim. Oh boy. What do you got now? What do you got now?
No, be the zoodle.
Be the zoodle you wish to see in the world. That's how I'm closing it out.
That's all you got.
That's where we got to leave it. That's too perfect.
Well, I got to give everybody else a chance. Greg, I think you should plug Indie Drop In real quick because you really do provide a great service for podcasters, and I think you should plug yourself. You deserve it. You're good.
Thank you so much.
Greg, plug yourself.
Thank you. I don't use Uncut FM to plug myself in case anyone was curious. But if anybody wants to check out Indie Drop In, it's indiedropin.com. Essentially what I do is if you have a scary, paranormal, true crime, or comedy podcast, I run a feed drop network. So essentially I play your show to my audience to help find you some listeners. It's really that simple. And we're over 2.5 years old now, and it's going strong. So new shows coming soon.
Thank you, Greg, and thank you for helping pay my student loans. Appreciate it.
No problem. Me and our sponsors have you covered.
Love it. Jim Mallard, you've been a quiet one, but you always have some words for the wisdom to close things out. What do you got?
Well, I'm gonna be on the selfish promotion train tonight. Unfortunately or fortunately for you, tomorrow night I have my wife on my show, so we're gonna peel back the curtain, and you're gonna learn a lot about me and my family, and something we haven't really talked about on my show in the last 11 years. So people have been kind of chirping and wondering, so we're gonna put it out there and let people hear what goes on behind the scenes here in the household. So good, bad, or indifferent, we're gonna do it. So.
True Maverick. Sounds like a good time. What do you think, Greg? You're going to be there?
Yeah, I mean, generally I prefer curtains to be closed, but I mean, I guess it'll be interesting.
Tanner, you've got 10 seconds. Sell us what you could sell anything. Like ice to an Eskimo. Do it.
You keep telling me that. No, I don't have anything to sell. I will need everyone's support in the coming weeks, as I have just recently ordered a hydro rowing machine, and I've finally lost enough weight where I can actually start doing some heavy exercise. So I'm going to start cranking these man boobies down. That's what I'm working on. That's what my week is all about.
The way sweaty AirPods pop out of your ears is going to make you furious. Just preparing you.
It's basically like the Peloton of rowing machines. It's pretty cool. Hopefully I didn't spend $3,000 on it for no fucking reason. It just sits there and collects dust and clothing. So
it's just 96 easy payments of $6.
Well, Tanner, Dave, I don't know if you can top this for your closing thoughts this evening, but I appreciate you taking the time to jump on here. It's nice to finally talk to you in person instead of just stalking you during your Ask the Podcast Coach on YouTube. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, first of all, Tanner, rowing sucks. I have one gathering dust in my basement. It's not fun, but
that's not supportive, Dave.
I'm sorry, but just keep thinking about it. I actually cleaned mine off today. I was like, I'm with you. I'm like, I got to work on the man boobs. But to go back to what Ariel said earlier, she said, look, try this, try that, try this and that. And it's one of those things that I was thinking about today that I'm like, I think I teach too much cookie cutter podcasting by numbers kind of thing. I was like, I think we need a little more creativity in the podcasting space. And
you want to co-host with me?
There you go.
Do not do it. Do not do it.
So that's all I have. But thanks for having me. This has been fun.
Dave does have a podcast, School of Podcasting. You should check out. He provides great information for podcasters. Well, I think we're going to put Greg. What do you got? I
was going to say I'm a proud patron of Ask the Podcast Coach. So, must have got me on that CTA.
That's it. I appreciate it.
so much love in this community. Don't we all love it? Speaking of love, I love all of you for joining us, and I hope you continue to do so. Next Monday, we'll be back at it again at 9 p.m. Eastern. Until then, thanks for attending Podcasting Power Hour. Keep being you, keep being great, and screw Patreon.
We're never going to get that sponsor, Jeff. I don't know. What are you doing, man?
Gosh, man. Whew.
Thank you for listening to the Podcasting Power Hour. Everyone is free to participate on Twitter Spaces every Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. To join, just follow Jeff at podcast_father or Greg at Indie Drop-In. If you found this podcast helpful, go into your podcast app and write a quick review. Other podcasters will see it and know this show is worth listening to. Also, I'll put a few links in the show notes for ways you can support the show. I think by now you know we love our coffee. Have a great week.
Now, I'll hang out for a few more minutes if people want to chat. Then I go get off here.
Well, maybe Audible will pick us up. I mean, does Audible drop that? They used to send out like millions and millions of dollars in podcast sponsorships, but I don't know if they do that anymore.
They have an affiliate program on, I think it's impact.com.
Did you say Audible?
Yeah.
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 Well, there we
Audible
go.
sponsored some of my shows maybe like 6 months ago, but not since then. Probably didn't get the conversion they wanted.
I think that's their goal to sponsor every podcast ever. Good for them, though.
Yeah, I want to sell mattresses. Like, that's when you know you made it.
Oh God, I hate the mattress commercials. I hate all commercials.
That's like your example, Pixie, of what you don't want to do. You always use the mattress example.
Always. And because it kind of seems skeezy for a stripper podcast to sell mattresses. So I just don't even want to go there.
Well, I heard Todd Cochran on the New Media Show explain how they sent him a Casper mattress, and he goes, "That's why they're not a sponsor." He goes, "The mattress sucked." He's like, "I'm not pimping that to my audience." So,
God, can you imagine?
No.
I'd sell a mattress. I don't care. Casper, bring it on.
He's in it for the money. He's all
Yeah.
about that money, baby.
I'll be like, you might not. My call to action will be amazing. Like, you might not know this right now, but I'm laying down, speaking in your ear holes.
Oh boy.
Well, I've got the worst sponsor pitch for you that I got in my inbox. Maybe I should save this for next week. We can talk about these. I got a diet pill they wanted to sponsor my show for a month and pay me $95, which was actually less than the pills they were trying to sell for a month.
Wow.
The whole bottle for a month was $175. They wanted to pay me $95 for the month.
I'll tell you, what do you guys do with your swag? For all of you that get sponsors, like, what do you do with your stuff? Like, I got blenders, I got pots, and I got stuff stacking up over here.
Why don't you do like a whole giveaway to your listeners?
Because they're supposed to buy it.
Oh.
He doesn't do
I don't
anything
know.
for free. He's
This is free? What are you talking about? Everything I do is for free.
Well, autograph it and then sell it to your listeners.
Oh, Jimmy.
They don't want that. They'll charge me for that. They don't.
One of one.
Yeah, it's one of one because no one wanted it.
There's an NFT too. The picture of me in it and the actual item.
Oh, God, it just gets worse. Like, you think, oh, that's a dumb idea, but nope, there's more.
Hey, that's why I'm here, right?
So with
Viral and out of control.
With the mattress, there's a guy on TikTok who basically went viral because he was and he did like, I think it was 24 hours. Every time you donated to him, something weird happened and he couldn't get sleep through the 24 hours. That would be a great one for the mattress.
I haven't
it's like-
slept in 3 weeks.
3 weeks?
Oh, how are you
Well,
alive?
you better hang up.
Yeah, you better go to bed now.
Just go
On that
and
note-
listen to my show for a few hours. It'll take care of that.
Oh, but only the next one.
The life and death of Jim Ballard.
Jim's like, niche? Nah, I'm going to have my wife on.
Yeah, screw this shit. This is overrated.
I got to get off here. I will talk to you all next week, and some of you in the meantime. Greg,
See you later.
Sounds good, Jeff. Talk
Yep.
to you
See
later.
y'all.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Hey,
Nice to talk.
it's in the game.
Thank you for that.
We'll take that exit.
Yes, I'm exiting now.
All right, bye.